Leon is one of the most important new characters from Pokemon Sword and Shield. Not only is he the champion, but he is held on a pedestal throughout the game as supposedly unbeatable to a level we haven't really seen with any other champion. Well, I have a theory that makes Leon even more interesting if it's true, and that is the subject of today's video. I believe that Leon might actually have been originally planned as the champion of the Alola region before he ended up in Galar. I know it's a big idea, but I actually think it makes a lot of sense, so without further ado, let's check it out. The first breadcrumbs that tell us Leon might actually have been planned for Alola start as far back as Pokemon X and Y. Courtesy of Birdkeeper Toby bringing this to my attention again while I was watching one of his recent videos, there is a very interesting piece of dialogue that is spoken during the Strange Souvenir event in X and Y. Just as a refresher, the Strange Souvenir was an item you could get in X and Y after following this backpacker around from hotel to hotel in Kalos, and the whole thing was one big hint towards Pokemon Sun and Moon. Well, when the backpacker finally gives you the souvenir and begins telling you about Alola, he mentions their champion and sort of emphasizes how strong they are. There's a big red flag here though, and that's that Alola doesn't have a champion, at least not until you become the first one. So, what's going on here exactly? We also know that it couldn't be talking about you as the player in Sun and Moon, since X and Y takes place before Sun and Moon in the timeline, and we know this thanks to Dexio and Cena's appearance in Alola, where they allude to this. With the explicit mention of a champion in a region that we know is Alola, and we know Alola did not have a champion at the time, there certainly seems to be some piece to this puzzle that we're missing, and that is where Leon comes in. You see, when the backpacker made mention of Alola's champion, not only was mentioning them significant, but he also made sure to emphasize and imply that they are really powerful, which, even though all champions are powerful, it sticks out because we also know that Leon is a little more highly touted than the other champions too, and it's emphasized a little more throughout Sword and Shield how strong he is, so this is the first thing that begins to bring Leon into the picture here as a legitimate answer to all of this. As a counter-argument though, you might wonder how someone as big and important as the champion could be cut from the games, or how Leon could fit into Alola if that was indeed the case. Well, one thing to point out is that, again, this reference is made in X and Y, which began the 6th generation of Pokemon. We know that new generations typically start development right after the first game in a prior generation, like X and Y, is finished. So it's not out of the ordinary to have a hint like this, but what needs to be considered is that Sun and Moon would have been very early into development at the time that this dialogue was put into the games, and it's very likely that a lot of things were different at that point to how they are in the final game, including the presence of a champion in the Alola region. Heck, we even know thanks to interviews that the trials system in Sun and Moon was somewhat of a late addition, which easily could have been the thing that prompted the no champion idea as well, which then would have caused Game Freak to put this idea of an extra powerful champion that ultimately became Leon on ice, and then was simply revisited and used in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Now, at least to me, this all sounds pretty dandy so far, but there's even more to this. Another feature of Leon is that he has a little brother named Hop, who is one of your rivals in Sword and Shield, and a lot of people almost immediately started drawing comparisons to Hau to the point where many people began to call Hop Hau 2.0. The comparisons are absolutely warranted as well because both characters have a similar darker skin tone and have very similar personalities, while also just looking pretty similar in general. This is actually pretty noteworthy, especially considering they're both rival characters, because rivals usually have very distinct designs that stand out from each other comparatively. This is yet another thing that could connect Leon to Alola, because along with his character trait of being a really powerful champion, it's also possible at this time that it was also established that he would be the older brother of the rival character, meaning that Hau was originally going to be Leon's brother, which would explain why Hop and Hau look so similar. If we compare Hau and Leon as well, they also have similarities, to the point that it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to call them former brothers. Obviously there are differences, but with both Hau and Leon eventually being repurposed into different roles than the ones they were possibly planned for, it makes sense that their designs would be tweaked to fit their new characters, which can very easily explain any discrepancies in their appearance. This idea could even explain why Hala, Hau's grandfather, exists as a character as well. Not only is he a relative of Hau, just like Leon could have been, but as a kahuna, he is also intrinsically tied to the Island Challenge, which we previously theorized was the possible reason for Leon being removed from Alola. So with Leon removed due to this reason, it's possible the developers wanted to bring in a new relative for Hau just to minimize the change in his character and backstory, and did so with the new trial system they brought in, creating Hala as a kahuna and the grandfather of Hau. It's also worth pointing out that both Hala and Leon give you your starter Pokemon at the beginning of the game, which gives them even more similarities. So all of that is a pretty compelling case in my opinion, but one more thing I wanted to bring up is that Leon gets his name from the Dandelion flower, and it just so happens that one of the main legendaries in Sun and Moon is a lion. Furthermore, the Dandelion is in the same family in terms of its species as the sunflower, and Solgaleo is a sun lion. While that might be more circumstantial type of evidence, it does make for a good cherry on top, so to speak, for this idea that Leon was going to be the champion of Alola and the older brother to Hau at one point. But when the trial system was brought in, the idea of a champion was scrapped, and the idea of Leon as a super powerful champion was put on ice until Generation 8 when it was brought back with Sword and Shield. Meanwhile, with this new trial system in place and Hau out a significant relative, Hala was made to take Leon's place and also serve as a key component of this new Island Challenge mechanic. Then, when Sword and Shield came around and Leon was revived, a new brother for him was created and Hop was born, showing similarities to Hau because they both shared the same brother at one time. Well, there you have it everyone. So what do you think of my theory? Do you think it's true, or is it a little too good to be true? Let me know with a comment below, and make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already for more Pokemon content. You can also check out my Pokemon remixes on Spotify to further support the channel, and check out my Pokemon Cardinal project if you haven't yet either. With that said, I will see you on Saturday with another video, and until then, as always, thanks for watching, and I will smell you guys later.